Hello and welcome to the Flipside. I'm your host, Dr. Michael Nichols. It's been an interesting week. I started off the week thinking about what I wanted to do for this episode, and I had a definitive plan in motion. And what do they say? Best laid plans, right? And I had a good show all set up. I'm going to postpone that idea though for another episode because as the week was progressing, I was seeing so much in the media about the measles outbreak in Texas. It was all over the media. It's just saturating the media, and so much misinformation being spewed regarding measles, regarding this outbreak, regarding the response, regarding Bobby Kennedy. There's so much just BS with this measles outbreak and what we're seeing with it. So I switched gears and I said, okay, I've got to do an episode on measles so that we can try and get some information out there that is different from what the mass media is telling us about measles, excuse me. And then on Thursday, as I'm getting everything together for today's recording, I watched, as I try to do every week, I watched The High Wire with Del Bigtree. I have mentioned this before to you. If you have not heard me say this, then hear me now. The High Wire with Del Bigtree is something everybody should be watching on a regular basis. Del has been doing this program for almost a decade, probably close to it, or maybe more. I'm not sure. It's been going on for quite a while now, and I've been watching since pretty much day one. It is one of the few, if one of the only, news sources that is going to give it to you straight and not only give you factual information, but show you the research, put it up on the screen and show you the research saying this is not opinion. This is not misinformation. It's right here from the CDC's website. It's right here from this research journal. And that's what they do with their program. It's what I'm trying to do with what I do here as well. So that when you hear the information, you're saying it's not just Del Bigtree telling you his opinion. It's not just Dr. Nichols telling you his opinion, that you're realizing that there's actual scientific backbone to everything that's being said. That's what I try to do with everything. And I know that's what the High Wire does. So the High Wire comes in on Thursday, and here I am hard at work getting my pieces together for my episode here on the measles. And lo and behold, what does the High Wire do? They do an entire show on the measles. They do like 2-hour shows, sometimes longer. And so a lot of the information that I was already planning on doing in this show here is there on the High Wire. So I'm going to continue and do my show as I had planned. I'm going to do the information as I wanted to do it. But I'm also going to suggest that you watch the episode on the measles from the High Wire. They're definitely covering some things that I'm not going to cover today. They have a longer format. They have a bigger research team. And so they're covering some things that I'm not going to cover today. And I am going to be covering maybe a few things that they didn't and some of the things that they are. But it's good for a confirmation watching it from another source as well. As is per usual, as is per the diatribe that the pro-vaccine people like to do. I don't like all these labels. They call us anti-vax, so I'm saying pro-vax, but I'm not sure another way to address it there. Those that promote and defend the vaccine program, how's that? They have a script. And it's easy to see the script if you listen long enough. You can see the exact same phrasing, and in some instances, the exact same words, the exact same sentence, cut and paste, regurgitated by news media after news media after news media after news media after news media all over the place. And it's exactly the same phrasing, the exact same terminology being used. And so, yeah, there's a script. And this script is that vaccines are holy grail. They are manna sent from heaven, and that anyone who speaks out against them has got to be a whack job. Call me whack job. There you go. But that's the way they do it. And they will tell you that vaccines are safe, that vaccines are effective. The measles vaccine, according to those who are defending and promoting the vaccine program, they will tell you that it is 97% effective. 97% effective, folks. That's pretty dadgum good, isn't it? Except for that's BS. It's BS that it's 97% accurate, and they know this. They're not completely stupid and incompetent. I mean, maybe partially, but not completely. But this is what they do, 97% effective. Now, remember, guys, for those who are watching, they did this with the COVID vaccine. Remember when it first came out, they were telling, they even made the claim that it was 100% effective. Even when they said that, they should have said in their head, maybe we shouldn't say 100% because that's obviously incorrect. Nothing's 100% effective. You know, condoms are not 100% effective. Birth control is not 100% effective. No drug on the market is 100% effective. There's always a little bit of here, a little bit of there. And the way they came up with that number was asinine. Okay. It was a lie. It was a total lie. I'm not going to get into that. That's not my subject today, but they lied about that. They're lying about this. It's not 97% effective. We're going to go through this today. So let's do a little background. I mean, if you're following the news, then you're aware of the measles outbreak in Texas. I think at the moment right now, it stands at, I think 124 cases. Now that is several days old, that information I'm saying, so it may be more now, who knows? But I think 124 cases. The outbreak began in a Mennonite community, which does not vaccinate. Excuse me. And at the time of my information, there were 18 people that had been hospitalized for the measles. Out of those 18, 5 of those people out of the 18 were confirmed vaccinated. The rest of them are either unvaccinated or it's unknown. So it could be that far many more are vaccinated. 5 for sure are vaccinated. The rest are either unvaccinated or unconfirmed, unknown. So they don't know for sure. Okay. I will tell you that the number is going to go up higher, that there are more that were vaccinated. And the reason I can say that with confidence is because there is vast amounts of evidence to show measles outbreaks in highly vaccinated communities. It is all over the research. I mean, I'm not going to pull up every piece of research today, but I'm going to pull up a few. I'll show them to you. They're out there. Highly vaccinated measles community can still get a vaccine now, a measles outbreak. And so far that we know, there is 1 death. Now, we don't know anything about the death. We don't know anything about this outbreak at all, really, that we should know. What are the things that we should know? Well, one of the things we should know is what is causing the outbreak? Is it wild measles virus, or is this vaccine strain measles, meaning that the outbreak is from a vaccine strain of measles, which is once again very prevalent with measles outbreaks. So we don't know, is it vaccine strain or is it wild strain, or what is the percentage of wild strain versus vaccine strain? We know 5 people who are vaccinated for sure have gotten it. Is that from vaccine strain? We don't know that yet. That's something that's really important. And that's something that should have been done right off the bat, but they don't typically do this. It's something you have to pursue. I can't fathom that Kennedy is not going to, make that happen. Another thing that we do not know is with the people that are hospitalized and with the death. And let me also say right up right off the bat. I am not here to downplay anyone who's sick or anyone who has died. Absolutely not what I'm here to do. I'm just here to give actual factual information to counteract the BS that's out in the regular media at this moment. So, for those parents that are involved in this, my heart goes out to you. I wouldn't want to see anybody's child, hurt or die from anything. But there are questions that have to be asked, regardless of any of these statements. One of those is, what is the health of the people that were in the hospital and for the child that died? Was the child a healthy child? Was the child already on medications from a bunch of other different conditions? That does make a difference. Okay. What was their vitamin A status? What were the treatments that were used in the hospital? And were they using vitamin A? Vitamin A has been shown repetitively in multiple studies to be very effective at fighting measles, and that people who do suffer more from measles or with measles have low vitamin A levels. So that is something that is known. It is out there, but it is not typically utilized in the hospitals. So those are things we got to know, we're still waiting for that information. All right. So let's talk a little bit about history. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about history, because we kind of need to know a little bit of this history going into the subject so that we can really see what is going on with measles. That's something that we need to do. So let's pull up a little slide here. Something I want to show you. Now, Kennedy was asked at the White House during a big meeting, and you may or may not have seen this. He was asked something about the Texas outbreak, the measles, and he made a comment. He said that there was nothing unusual about what was going on, that the media was turning it into something, but it's nothing that's unusual. And immediately, the Associated Press, CNN, and all of the typical ridiculous media immediately put out these articles and these news posts basically berating Kennedy for saying something that was obviously so stupid and wrong. And they quoted other doctors as saying, that's not a true statement. This is where you, as an audience, you really need to make sure that you're listening to other sources, because there's so much that's being spewed into the regular media that is just outright lies, just blatant lies. And you can find the evidence if you wish. They're hoping that you don't do that. They're hoping that you take their word for it upon first seeing or hearing what they say, and then just leave it alone and go with that. And there will be people that will do that. The sheep of this world will do that. And there are plenty of people who will just follow along with whatever the media tells them is accurate and right. So let me show you this. So what are we looking at here? Well, what we're looking at here is a table taken from the CDC's website. Okay, so this is taken from the Center for Disease Control, from the CDC, from their website. Okay, folks, going from the year 2000 to now, and it's trying to show, and it's showing you the number of measles cases per year. So let's look at this. Look at this, 2000. So this is 200 right here. And notice that we're pretty much under 200 all the way through, okay, except for a few years. Somewhere here, which is probably 2010. Over here, this is 2000, I don't know, 14 or 15 here. And then we've got 2019, maybe 2020, or 2018, 2019. And then look at this, this is 2024. So other than these few here that go over 200, okay, we have this pretty normal trend, okay? Yes, it goes up and then goes back down and comes back up, right? But relatively the same. So when Bobby Kennedy says, is nothing unusual about this, where's the evidence that he's wrong on this? I'm looking at the evidence from the CDC, and the number of cases of measles fluctuates from year to year, but there is a fairly steady amount for the most part. We hit an area here, okay, so from 2015 or 14 to 2019, where there's more overall cases. In fact, 2019 was the most that America had seen in quite a while, since the 90s, and it was over 1,200. Now, I don't recall, I know I had that information down written somewhere, and I don't know where it is though. How many people actually died in 2019? I want to say it was like 1 or 2. I could be very off by that, but I don't think I'm off by much. It was very small percentage, okay? The actual percentage of people that die from measles is very, very low. It is very low. So when they try to tell you how catastrophic measles is, in our distant past, early 1900s, late 1800s, that type of thing, yes, it was catastrophic. Measles and many, many, many other conditions and diseases killed hundreds and thousands of people. But we'll touch upon that as well, okay? But first, right off the bat, just to talk about misinformation. Was Kennedy wrong with saying that it is nothing unusual to see the number of cases? So right now, like I said, we're at 124. I think last year's was like 258 or something like that. We're off to a big start for 2025. But once again, nothing that's necessarily unusual in the ebb and flow of the measles virus. Okay. In the ebb and flow of measles virus, it's not something unusual. Okay. So that's the first thing I wanted to share with you there, just to show you that. So measles virus, according to many experts, has a cyclical nature to it in the way that it comes back every certain amount of years. It's something like every 4 years or something, measles cases rise and then they fall. And then in another 4 years, they rise and then they fall. You saw that a little bit in that flow there. There's a little bit of that, okay? So that's something that is said among experts. I'm not an expert in that, but that's something that I've read in many papers from experts saying that measles virus ebbs and flows about every 4 years. And so we are entering one of the 4-year cycles, which means it should naturally come up. So from 2019, where we had that spike, now we're in 2025. Every 4 years, that's 5 years maybe, but 4 years was last year, 258, right? There's an ebb and a flow to that. And in the 2019, I want to say it's 2019, during that time period, and I'm going to pause on what I was going to say there, because I'm going to bring up a paper here in a minute, which I'll show you what I was going to say there. But let's look back at history a little bit more, because the media does this with everything. So it's not just vaccines. They'll do this with everything. If there's going to be a flood, if there's going to be a snow, if there's going to be anything, they will try their best to create fear, make you scared, because I guess it sells more for them. And so they want to get you all riled up. One of the many reasons why I do my best not to watch any of legacy media, because it's a bunch of bunk. So they want to get you riled up. So they're going to tell you, measles is going to kill everybody. And of course, it's because of the 2 to 3% of the population that are unvaccinated. You heard it from me, 2 to 3% of the population that's unvaccinated in America, we're talking about, that's going to kill everybody. Okay. Right. That could lead us back into a conversation about herd immunity, but we'll hold that off for another show. So I want to illustrate something here, and I'm going to show, where did it go? There it is. All right. Now, I don't know exactly where this is going to start. So hopefully this will start at a place that is not too long. I want to show you something. This idea that measles is this catastrophic event. Now, if you're anywhere around my age, which is then you most likely got measles naturally. I caught measles when I was a kid. I went through it, survived. It sucked being sick as a kid. Everything sucks as a kid when you're sick. You don't want to be sick, but I got over it easily. My older sister also, measles. I don't remember if my younger sister got it or not, but my older sister and I got measles. We got chicken pox, and we went through it. And our parents didn't freak out. We just stayed home, and we were treated as just a sick kid would be treated, and we got over it. And all of our friends, same thing. And in fact, in a lot of situations, people would bring their kids over to someone's house and let them get sick, because then you know exactly what they have. If I know this kid has measles and I expose, and then my kid gets sick and it's measles, and then they know how to handle it, and it's not as scary. And a lot of parents did that. They had chickenpox parties, they had measles parties to actually physically, on purpose, get their kids sick. And because they did that, the child would get lifelong immunity in most situations. In most cases, lifelong immunity from that exposure to chickenpox or measles. Now, in reality, what really keeps it lifelong is that you get exposed to wild measles or wild chickenpox from time to time. And because your body went through it once already, it breezes through it the second time and reinforces the immunity that you had from the first exposure. That's what's supposed to happen. That's the reality of the situation. We get exposed, our body works through the process, we become stronger. If we get exposed again, it's easier for the body to deal with it. That's secondary exposure instead of primary exposure. And that builds up your immune system. And we as individuals become stronger for that, and it reinforces the immunity to that entity. But I wanted to show you something that kind of reinforces the nonchalance that we had regarding measles back in the day. Okay. Share sound, hide the controls, and here we go.
Peter, what are you doing home from school?
They sent me home. Measles.
That's either measles or a strange case of red freckles.
You have got a temperature.
They told me 101.1. What's the record?
Never mind. That's one record you don't want to break.
Right, you don't get to hold the title very long.
I think you better go upstairs and get into bed. I'll phone the doctor and be right out.
Measles. Let's hope all the others don't start coming down with it.
Oh, that would be terrible.
Right. As the warden of the state prison once said, I sure would hate to see them all break out at once.
Oh, no. Are you sure it's the measles?
Well, he certainly got all the symptoms. A slight temperature, a lot of dots, and a great big smile.
A great big smile.
No school for a few days.
You got measles. Golly, mothers are supposed to know everything. But do you have to keep proving it?
Well, you got a temperature, too.
What do you mean, too?
Peter was sent home from school a little while ago.
Oh, what's his temperature?
101.1.
Oh, is that all? I'm 101.2. Oh, Greg, you on my railroad.
I'll be a sport. You can ride on it free.
Thanks a lot. It's your turn, Peter. Mine. Two more times. Missed it.
Boy, this is the life, isn't it?
Yeah, if you have to get sick, sure can't beat the measles. That's right. No medicine.
Inside or out. Like shots, I mean.
Don't even mention shots.
Jan had chicken pox, and Marcia and Cindy had mumps. There. Well, whichever doctor we choose, at least we'll have all the information on all the kids.
Greetings. How are things in Brady General Hospital?
Well, we're still featuring measles. Take a look.
What's this? Some kind of wall-to-wall Scrabble?
Hey, it's a marvelous new idea, but we sure could use your help.
What illnesses, diseases do you recall?
The doctors have kept records that they can transfer from one to the other.
And it's time for the kids' ice cream sundaes.
Ice cream sundaes? It's almost dinner.
That's Marcia. She's afraid we didn't hear Greg.
Kids. Because they have a few dots on their faces, I think they can order everybody around. I think they're taking advantage now.
All right. So I don't know who has seen that episode of the Brady Bunch before. If you're from my generation, Brady Bunch was the thing to watch. Everybody watched the Brady Bunch, but that was from 1969. And that wasn't done to make fun of people. I mean, if measles was that serious and people were just dropping off like flies, do you really think they would have done a show back then like that, so lighthearted about measles? No. What they did was they did a show that was comedic, that illustrated the reality of how people deal with measles. And back then, that's exactly how we dealt with them. Now, let's understand something about the measles from that perspective of time, okay? Let's look at another thing here. I want to show you something else here. Where is it? Here it is. Okay. Now, what I'm going to show you here is this graph right here. All right. Now, hopefully you can see this well, but this is showing 1838 here on the far left of the graph and 1978 over here on the far right of the graph. And what this is showing you is measles cases. This is deaths, I'm sorry, deaths from measles. So deaths from measles per 100,000. So when we talk about catastrophic situation from the earlier times, right? So we're talking upwards of 70,000 per 100,000. That's catastrophic. That's 1838 though. Notice that it drops off quite a bit as we go through the 1800s and then kind of levels out until we reach the early 1900s. Here we are, right here where I'm circling, that's 1903. And from 1903, right here where we have this gap in data, from 1903 all the way down here, this is 1953, 1958, and right here where they're showing the arrow, that's 1968, okay? Notice the dramatic drop. I mean, it's a nosedive from the early 1900s. It is a nosedive. Yes, there are spikes, but it's a nosedive all the way down here to the 60s. Why did measles cases plummet? And plummet is definitely the appropriate word for that. Why did it plummet like that from the early 1900s to that? Because we started making changes in our environment that we lived in. Better sewage, better drinking water, better access to clean, healthy foods, better medical care, okay? All of these things were changing from the early 1900s through the 1900s up into the 60s. That stuff was changing. In that 60 to 70, 80-year time period, we made drastic changes in the environment in which we existed in. Prior to that, people were taking their waste buckets, okay, remember there weren't functioning toilets, and throwing them out the window. There were rivers of filth that ran through alleyways, collecting rats and mosquitoes and flies and all sorts of other just nasty, right? It's no wonder that people were dropping off like flies in that type of environment. Their drinking water was contaminated. Most of that filth that they were flowing into the street was running off into the river where people got their water from, right? And so people were drinking filthy water. They were living in squalor and in filth. And especially in the big cities where that was happening, right? If they lived out in the woods way off next to a river or something where they separated everything, and maybe not, but especially in those larger cities. So from the early 1900s all the way up here until the 60s, there was this precipitous drop, this huge drop in the number of deaths from measles. Now, cases went down too. I'm not showing you that here, but measles deaths went down dramatically. Now, notice that they're showing 1968 as the date for the measles vaccine to come out. You may argue that and say, oh, no, it was 1963. There was a measles vaccine that was introduced in 1963, but it was pretty quickly removed from the market because of being ineffective and actually causing death and damage to people that was being given that vaccine. Then another one was introduced. That one had a problem as well. And then they introduced another one. So there were at least 3 vaccines introduced in a 10-year period between 1963 and early 1970. And it was in the 70s that they then combined the measles vaccine with the rest of them to form MMR, measles, mumps, rubella. But let's just use 68 as a good starting point for measles vaccination. And if we do that, notice the number of deaths. So when you hear that whole thing of vaccines are what saved us, vaccines are what took the deaths away, vaccines are what kept our children from dying, once again, hyperbole and bullshit is what it is, okay? Hyperbole and bullshit. They want you to believe that that's what saved everybody. Now, I'm not going to tell you that no one's ever been saved by a vaccine, because that would be BS also, okay? But to say that it's the holier than thou savior that we shouldn't talk bad about is the part that's ridiculous, right? And so with measles, we talk about how deadly it is. How deadly was it in that Brady Bunch show, right? I mean, yes, it's just a show, but it's showing you how we thought about it back then. We thought about it as it's just a childhood illness. And yes, someone could die from it, but the chances are very, very low, right? How low? All right, well, let's get into that. Let me show you something else here. All right, I want to show you something else. Now, this is from, I think I have, I don't have it here. Okay. Well, there is I took it away. Okay. All right. I took it away. Well, I had where I got this from, and now I clicked off of it. So I'm not gonna be able to give you where I got this information from. It was, let me just pull it up and then we'll talk. All right, here we go. So what you're going to see here, I could get this up here. All right. All right, let me start over here. Okay, there we go. Let's bring that back down. All right, this should show up now. Here we go. All right, here we go. All right, so what you're seeing here is our numbers, and you can see measles up here, 1955. Okay, so 1940 to 1955. And so I'm going to start it here, and I'll show you another slide, another picture here in a minute, a slide. I'm showing my age there. 1940, 1955. The paper that I got this from, like I said, I had it up on my screen earlier before I started all this programming. I must have clicked off of it, but it's a governmental records data from this time period, showing you the data of deaths from a variety of different things. It was like 56 pages long. It was very long. And on one of the pages, it goes over the deaths from measles. So this was per 100,000 deaths per 100,000. Okay. And so we've got 1940, 0.5 per 100,000. 0.5 for 100,000, okay? The highest it gets from 1940 to 1955 is 1.7 per 100,000. So 100,000 people with measles, only 1.7, less than 2 people were dying per 100,000 people. That was 1941. So when they tell you about all the people that were dying, they're either doing 2 things. They're either lying to you directly, or they're so stupid in the sense that they can't read numbers from papers, that you shouldn't listen to them anyway. So they're too stupid and you shouldn't listen to them, or they're just lying to you because they have some kind of nefarious intent, which means you shouldn't listen to them. So once again, this is from the data, from the records that were kept on deaths. 1.7, that's the highest between 1940 and 1955. Like I told you, it took a precipitous drop, right? The number of people that were dying per cases was much, much lower. Now, I think if I switch here, yeah, okay. Now, this is bringing it up a little bit more. So here we go from 1956 to 1960. So remember, the first vaccine was released in 1963. Then another one in 1968, which was the more effective one, I guess. And then it went into the MMR vaccine in the 1970s. But up into the 1960s, we were still 0.2 per 100,000 cases ended in death. All right. So once again, I'm not looking for you to believe me. I'm looking for you to look at the information that I'm showing you, which is straight from the record books. And you can believe that. You don't have to believe me, okay? So, once again, as an illustration, was measles horrifically, catastrophically deadly at one point? I got a wire wrapped around my leg here. Hang on a second here. There we go. Yes, at one point. But that point was, well over 100 years ago that it was really that bad. Well, maybe 100 years ago it was still bad. But we're still talking a long time ago. And this was way before the vaccine for measles ever came into existence that it started to go down and go down dramatically. Now, I once again don't have the paper pulled up here, but in my vaccine book, there is a point about the history. And I have a long couple of paragraphs of quotes from the CDC's website regarding, once again, the history of vaccines. And this is from the CDC, where they say themselves that the primary drivers for the reduction of death and disease were, once again, better, improved sanitation, better, cleaner drinking water, access to food, access to medicines, and improved medicines that changed over the year, like antibiotics, that type of thing, right? Those were the things that made the big difference. Did vaccines make a difference? Like I said, I'm not going to get into an argument with that and say that they didn't do anything at all. I know people from my position who say exactly that. They didn't do a damn thing. That doesn't even make sense to me either, though. I'm sure they did something. But if we take things into a proper perspective and say, okay, measles is not the disastrous thing for my child that the promoters of the vaccines are trying to tell me. And so my child, if my child is a healthy child, does not have this high risk of death from measles, chickenpox, or some of the other ones either, but we'll just focus on measles. Then you also have to be able to have the information, which you don't get, regarding the harms that are possible from the vaccine. Now, once again, the promoters of the vaccines, they will like to tell you that the harms from this disease far, far, far outweigh the dangers that might exist from the vaccine. They'll make it out like there's nothing to fear with the vaccine, but you sure as hell better be fearful of this disease. But as I'm showing you right now with this information, measles as an entity in our day and time is not what it was in the early 1900s, the late 1800s, nor what it was in the 1960s, before the vaccines, folks. And so the vaccine is not the savior. Your body's immune system is the savior. Because if you give your body all the tools it needs to be healthy, good, clean drinking water, good, clean air, as much as you can control that, good, clean foods, okay? The ability to manage stress, lots of love and happiness and activity. If you give your body those things, your innate intelligence that governs your immune system knows how to fight these things and knows how to keep you healthy. That's why a healthy person does not typically die from things like this. Just like with COVID, most people that died from COVID, the highest percentage by far were people over the age of 65, 70 years old with 3 to 4 comorbidities, meaning they already had 3 or 4 really bad things going on in their body. Their immune system was already beat to hell when COVID came along, which made it difficult for them to fight it. Does that mean that COVID is the badass? No, not really. It means that weakened immune systems were the target, okay? And measles is really no different than that, all right? Now, once again, I'm not trying to be your doctor. I'm not trying to tell you what to do. You get to make those decisions. You get to decide, okay, here's the real information about measles. Here's the real information about the harms from the vaccine. What should I do? Well, maybe they're both seeming equal to you, okay? Let's say that. Now, I'm not going to tell you they are because I don't think they are at all, but let's just use that as an argument. I think that they're equal. So now I'm going to make my decision not based on is this more harmful than this or is this more harmful than this, but I'm going to make my decision based on, well, if the risks are the same and I take this, it's going to give me, it's going to help protect those that are weaker than me. I'm going to do this to protect those that are weaker than me. So I'm going to be this person that's going to help everybody by getting a vaccine and help those that are weaker than me. So there's a bunch of things to consider there. Number one, are you around a bunch of people that are weak all the time? You know, maybe you have a sick niece or something that you, or a sick grandmother, and you don't want to be around them without the vaccine. Okay. So then we have to say, are we really talking about a 97% efficacy, 97% efficiency or effectiveness with this vaccine? Is it really that? Is the vaccine going to protect that person that is weak? And I'm doing this for them. Okay. Mighty something of you there to go out there and get that vaccine because you're protecting that other person. That's great. But here's the reality. That's also not going to necessarily be the case either. Let's go back to 2015. 2015 is when we had the big measles outbreak at Disneyland. The big Disneyland outbreak. This was, and as I write about this in my book, this was kind of the catalyst for those that promote and defend the vaccine program. This was their catalyst for action. Prior to 2015, there was vaccine resistance, vaccine hesitancy. There was a movement that was growing and building that we were slowly starting to label as the health freedom movement. And it was gaining steam. Now, once again, we were still 2 or 3% of the population. We were a very small percentage, but we were becoming, if not larger, we were becoming more vocal. And because of that vocal aspect, the media was picking up on some of it before they were shut down and told not to do that, which they were. But we were becoming more vocal, and they didn't like this. So in 2015, they got their shot. Now, whether or not they created that or not, I'm not going to get into that part of the conspiracy if you want to right now as such. But in 2015, there was a major breakout, a major outbreak of measles that started at Disneyland in California. And if you were paying attention at the time, it went something like this. Ah! everybody was screaming and yelling and going crazy. And oh my God, everybody, there's measles. And it was just, everybody's freaking out. And of course, immediately, it's the unvaccinated. I mean, it was immediately it was the unvaccinated that created this. It was an unvaccinated person that caused it. We later found out it was caused by someone who came in from another country and brought the measles virus with them from another country. But what we found of the, and I'm hoping I'm getting the numbers correct here, of the, I think 82 cases, and you know what, I actually think I have the information here. Yeah, I do, right here. So during the measles outbreak in California in 2015, a large number of suspected cases occurred in recent vaccinees. Of the 194 measles virus sequences obtained in the United States in 2015. Now remember, this was not just from California. This was the United States. 194 measles virus sequences were obtained in the United States in 2015. 73 of those were identified as vaccine sequence. Okay. What does that mean? That means that out of 194 cases, of measles in 2015, 73 of those were vaccine strain. 73, folks. So almost half of the cases in 2015 were created or caused by the vaccine. That's something that you should really grab hold of there, because you know the media at that time was harsh against the unvaccinated. I mean, really harsh. They came out strong enough to where Senator Pan of California started putting out legislation. We are going to take away all exemptions from California. You can no longer get an exemption. Now, it ended up being that they left the medical exemption, which is the worst one of all of them as far as that goes, which we've talked about before. But they were taking away exemptions. They were trying to take away the ability to homeschool because they didn't like homeschoolers, because homeschoolers didn't feel like they had to get vaccinated because they weren't being threatened with the loss of education, right? So they were homeschooling, and that gave them freedom, and they didn't like that. God forbid an American has freedom, right? But that was the situation in 2015, and it was bad. And it only got worse. 2016 all the way up to 2020, before the pandemic, the people on that side of the fence were actively trying to take away the rights from Americans when it came to vaccines in big, bold, sweeping moves. Now I'm getting a little off topic, but it goes to the point of what's happening currently with the measles vaccine and with the way the media is addressing it. And of course, it's Bobby's fault, right? Bobby just became the head of Health and Human Services. He just became the head of this agency, what, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago? And of course, it's his fault that there's an outbreak in Texas. That's the way they're trying to set it up in the media, that it is Trump's fault and it's Bobby Kennedy's fault for this outbreak, even though there were 258 cases last year under Biden, but it wasn't his fault, right? So, you know, whatever, go figure. That's the way they like to play this. They're turning it into a political opportunity by creating lies. But I just want you to see through the lies. I want you to see through the lies and see the reality of the situation. This is not a Republican or Democratic thing. It's a virus. And that virus doesn't give a rat's butt whether or not you're a libertarian or a liberal or a conservative. It doesn't care. Okay? It doesn't care at all. Now I want to show you something else here. We talked about someone maybe deciding to take the vaccine because they were wanting to protect others, which seems like a really noble thing. I'm going to do this to protect others and not to take away someone's nobility. But is that really what's going to happen here? Okay. Now, remember that I said that in 2019 in the United States, I showed you that graph earlier, there were over 1,200 measles cases, 1,200. Well, at the same time, around the world, measles cases were higher than they've ever been. So remember what I said. I said that measles as a virus has a cyclical nature. And about every 3, 4, 5 years, it spikes and comes back down again. Well, this is kind of evidence of that. It's not a perfect evidence, but this wasn't just a United States thing with over 1,200 cases. In Europe, there were more than 80,000 people. More than 80,000 people contracted measles in 2018 in Europe. Okay, that's actually a quote from the World Health Organization. 80,000 people in European countries contracted measles in 2018. So right around that same time, 2018, 2019, okay, we had that. And that was one of the highest levels of measles in a long, long, long time. Now, I wanted to show you something else that went along with that. Where is it? There it is. Okay. So remember, I said about the measles in Europe, that was to segue into showing you this. There we go. All right. So this paper that I'm showing you here, it's from the journal Vaccines, and this is a pro-vaccine journal from the journal Vaccines. It is from Italy. This paper was written from a bunch of different people in Italy. Measles virus infection and immunity in a suboptimal vaccination coverage setting. So they're trying to show that in the paper, essentially, that because there wasn't enough vaccine coverage, that's what caused the problems, specifically in Italy. But this is once again looking at that same time period that I just quoted regarding the 80,000 people across Europe that had gotten the measles. So I wanted to go down. There was, this is showing right here. This was talking about from 2017, 60,000 is what they're showing you there. But once again, the World Health Organization uses the number 80,000 for Europe. And if you go down, it's a lengthy article. But if you go down, got some stuff highlighted here for you. Measles infections in vaccinated individuals are increasingly being reported when outbreaks occur in highly vaccinated populations. So remember what I said, that the vaccine being 97% effective and that unvaccinated people are the cause for the outbreaks is not a true statement when said the way I just said it, which is the way the media says it. If the media is telling you the unvaccinated are the cause of this outbreak, that is a blanket statement that does not actually illustrate the real truth of what's going on. This article went on to say reduced efficacy of vaccine-induced immunity against wild-type measles virus strains has been hypothesized to play a role in measles reemergence. In the case of mumps, infection in fully vaccinated individuals are not uncommon. Now, I included that highlighted there about the mumps, even though we're not talking about mumps, because I wanted to show you how this issue of vaccine strain infection is not just a measles situation. Mumps is another one. A very large number of the whooping cough and mumps and these types of things, when they have outbreaks, it's actually in fully vaccinated populations where the vast majority of people that are getting these infections have already been vaccinated once, twice, 3 times with these vaccines. This is a very common situation. And we go down here a little bit further in this article. Another factor that might contribute to the reemergence of measles in vaccinated populations could be the progressive loss of vaccine protection over time. However, vaccine-induced immunity might wane with time in the absence of boosting by exposure to wild-type circulation. If we looked at chickenpox, chickenpox is another one of those that is really not a major catastrophic illness. Kids get it, they don't feel good, they get over it, they have immunity, period. There it is. Now, do people die from that? Sure. Okay, people die from lots of things, but that is the most common thing. You get it, you don't feel good, you get over it, you got the immunity, okay? And the way chickenpox stays away is that people who caught it once in a while are exposed by wild type chickenpox, and that keeps that virus locked away and it doesn't reemerge. Now, when it does reemerge with chickenpox, what do we then call that? We call it shingles. And so we have a shingles epidemic right now in our country, and that's because we don't have exposure to wild type chickenpox the way that we used to at all, because the vaccine was very effective at eliminating that. But there's a consequence to that. And now we have an outbreak of an epidemic of shingles because of that. And here we are in this article talking about immunity waning from measles because we're not getting that natural boost from exposure to wild type virus. That's called nature, folks. That's the way things are supposed to act. That may scare the living bejeebers out of a lot of people because they don't think we as human beings are strong enough to withstand a virus. But our bodies are made to withstand those viruses if we're healthy. If we keep ourselves healthy, we have the strength to combat the viruses. But instead, through science, we've tried to change nature. We've tried to say, hey, we're smarter than nature. We're going to beat nature. We're going to beat the vaccine, and we're going to beat nature, and we're going to win this war. They like to call it like a war. You can't win a war against a virus. It doesn't work that way. These kind of things have a way of rearing their ugly heads again and doing something, right? We've had in our country outstanding vaccination rates for a long time, upwards of 96, 98% for most of the vaccines for extended periods. But that's not enough. It's still not enough. And measles is not dangerous to the extent that we have to force this type of thing upon people. I think that was it on that paper. Yeah. Now there's another paper here. I'll go ahead and switch over to this. Estimating age-specific vaccine effectiveness using data from a large measles outbreak in Berlin, Germany. This was 2014, 2015. Evidence for waning immunity, another paper. And I'm just going to come all the way down to the bottom here just to show you their results. Results of our population-based study suggest the existence of waning immunity of the measles vaccine. The impact of waning immunity to measles will likely become more apparent over the coming years and may increase in the future as the vaccinated population with hardly any exposure to measles will grow older and the time since vaccination increases. What does that mean? Well, what they're saying in that paper is that they're predicting, this was 2014, 2015, that over the next years, over the coming years, that they're expecting a bigger problem with measles. And they're expecting a bigger problem primarily because people are getting vaccinated, which is not giving the type of immunity that their body needs. And there's not enough wild type exposure to give them that and to boost that. And that's what they're saying there. So you're not getting this protection from the vaccine to protect you for life and do that. When I think about my kids, they've got strong immune systems. They got strong immune systems. They fight off infection very well. When they got COVID, it was like nothing. It was over within a day or two. It was not a big deal. And I'm proud of that. But I would have liked for my kids, and this would be shocking for some, I would have liked for them to have caught chickenpox. I would have liked for them to have caught measles. I wish that they had. I could have known what it was. I could have done the proper procedures to keep them healthy during the process, let them have that immunity, and that would protect them better as adults. But they didn't. They have not caught that. Not for lack of trying, actually, too. We took them to a chickenpox party, and they were the kids that didn't get it. They did not get it after being exposed. Strong immune systems, once again. So, I do worry about that. I worry about as they get older, they've not been exposed, and so they don't have that immunity in their bodies. But that doesn't mean that I would want them to have an injection from these vaccines to create that exposure, because it doesn't create the exposure the way natural exposure does. It's not the same. Injecting something directly into your bloodstream is circumventing the natural process of which our body gets exposed through the nose, through the eyes, through the mouth. Those are the ways that we tend to get exposed, or through a cut, right? But, if we're breathing it in, which is typical for most of these things, ingesting it, we have a pathway for that. And the body recognizes things through that pathway. But when you inject it directly into the bloodstream, it ignores that pathway. It is a different exposure. It is different. And anybody who says it's not different is not understanding immunology the way they say they understand immunology. I've taught immunology for years. I've taught anatomy and physiology for years, and immunology is part of that. That doesn't make me an expert immunologist, but I don't have to be that to have common sense as well. I don't have to have a degree in epidemiology to be able to read papers and understand how the body works. Understand that measles is, like I said, it's not the badass that everybody wants to make it out to be. That's what I want to say. Now, I wanted to read, where was it? Well, I had a quote here. If you went back over time, and I am not finding it now. Once again, another one of these situations where I unfortunately clicked off certain things that I had up on the screen, so I don't have them up here now. Oh, well. But I had some quotes by a variety of different high-level doctors, a couple of people that were surgeon generals, and their quotes were basically saying the same thing that I've said before, that measles in the vast majority of cases is not a threat, that most people get XYZ symptoms, a fever, the rash, etc., and they don't feel good for a few days, and they get over it with lifelong immunity. And that's what all these quotes said. If you want these quotes, you can email me. I can actually send you some of the quotes, but it's common knowledge. It's common knowledge. It was in the literature for decades and decades, and it's only now with our media bought and paid for and saying exactly what the farmer reps want them to say that we're not getting that information anymore. Now, you may have also heard about vitamin A. And where is the vitamin A article? And I am just not together today. All right. Where'd it go? There it is, right there. All right. So this is, and like I said, I like to show this stuff as often as I can because, it's once again, making sure that you're taking not just my word for it, but you're actually seeing that I'm doing exactly what I say I do. I look at this information. This is from the New England Journal of Medicine, one of the most prestigious medical journals around, period. And this was from 1990, a randomized controlled trial of vitamin A in children with severe measles. And in this, I'm just going to jump straight to the conclusion. Treatment with vitamin A reduces morbidity and mortality in measles, and all children with severe measles should be given vitamin A supplements, whether or not they are thought to have a nutritional deficiency. That's pretty straightforward. I mean, that's saying, I don't care if you check their deficiency or not, you need to be giving all kids with measles vitamin A. Now, I picked one paper, but if you do a Google Scholar search for vitamin A and measles, you will find dozens. This is not something that has been studied once and then everybody picked up on it and ran with it. It has been studied a lot. And the results are almost exactly the same in all of the studies, that vitamin A with measles is an important factor. Did the hospital in Texas treat the kids with vitamin A? It's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I know what I would guess, okay, that they didn't, but maybe I'm wrong. Hopefully I am wrong. Did the hospital treat these kids with vitamin A? That's what they should have done. That's what the research, that's what the papers are saying is safe and effective, is vitamin A. But we're talking about supplements. Don't make any money off supplements. Pharmaceutical companies don't make money off the supplements. Why would they promote that? They don't promote it because they don't make any money off of it. Yeah, but that means that they're not taking care of our kids, and they wouldn't just do that, would they? Well, I don't know. My guess is yes, they would do that. And they have done that, and they are doing that. They did it all the way through COVID. They've been doing it for all sorts of different things for forever. This is the way they operate. During COVID, we had ivermectin. Ivermectin was belittled by the liberal media. It was belittled. Any doctor that even mentioned the word ivermectin could have their license stripped and their hospital privileges removed and lose their jobs. And it happened. It happened quite a bit. I could give you a list of medical doctors who haven't even gotten their jobs back now. Some of them have. Some of them still are struggling to be to get justice, to get their license back, all for recommending ivermectin. And ivermectin was a product that was around for forever. One of the most safe and effective medications on the market. Nobel Prize, the person who created ivermectin, Nobel Prize for medicine, has a statue. I forget where the statue is, with the person who created ivermectin on it. I mean, this is a product that's been around for a long time, tons of safety studies, and yet couldn't use it. Still, in the hospitals today, still it is not being used on any kind of regular basis in the vast majority of hospitals. That's because there's still a stigma attached to it because the liberal media shut it down. And it did that because if we had had a safe and effective product, they couldn't have used the Emergency Use Act to create the vaccines. Now, am I off topic here because we're talking about measles? Yes, but no. This is what you get with the media. This media that we have that likes to lie, that likes to listen to the people paying for their ads, which hopefully Kennedy will get rid of those freaking ads, and that'll take away that incentive. That'll hopefully maybe bring back the legitimacy of our media. Do you remember Walter Cronkite, Barbara Walters, these people who were these paragons of truth and freedom in our media that we had back in in my day for sure. And you don't really see that anymore. Now you just see a bunch of talking heads telling you exactly what the government or the media wants you to, or want them to tell you. And so this hype about measles, I hope I've done a pretty decent job of showing you that it is common and natural what we're seeing right now. This is not unusual. Just like Bobby Kennedy said, it's not unusual. We see this type of upswing and downswing with measles on a fairly cyclical nature. Measles is deadly. You're all going to frickin' die if you don't take the vaccine. No, not true. I hope I've shown you that. Even from before the vaccine, measles was going down into very, very small digits as far as the number of deaths and the number of cases. Before the vaccine ever even came around, it was already becoming self-limiting because of its environment. It didn't have the squalor to thrive in anymore. And so it was dying out. It wasn't as potent as it was. We, as human beings, our immune systems were becoming stronger. Okay. So no, it doesn't have that. Can you die if you get measles? You can die from all sorts of things, okay? And so yes, you can die from getting measles. You can die from all sorts of things. The biggest factor in measles and in pretty much everything is, what is your own immune system like? Are you a strong, healthy individual? Are you doing the things you need to do to make your immune system strong? Then I wouldn't worry about it. You know, your choice, okay? But me, I'm not going to worry about it. I know what I'm doing for my own health. And that's what gives me the determination and the motivation and the understanding that I can withstand those things. You know, and if I die tomorrow of measles, joke's on me, right? But I went out doing it the way I wanted to do it, and I chose what was going to happen. And I'm totally fine with me making the choice and not somebody else. We got lots to talk about. We're talking about some good stuff here. I hope, once again, that you got some good information out of this episode. Don't cave into fear. There's an old, I don't know, expression or whatever, FEAR, F period, E period, A period, R period. False evidence appearing real. Fear is false evidence appearing real. And that's exactly what it is, folks. False evidence appearing real. Don't cave into it. Don't become fearful, become educated. Don't listen to one person, me or anybody else, and think, oh, well, this is just it right there. No, take it. Take it with a grain of salt, but take it. And then look at something else. Take it with a grain of salt. Look at something else. Fact check, triple check, okay? But certainly don't take fact check from those jokers in the media who like to tell you one side of a story, and that one side is usually hyperbole or lies. And so don't just take that as truth and become fearful, okay? Our bodies are strong. They were meant to be that way. They were created that way. And you can make them stronger by the actions that you take. Those are things that we'll go over in these episodes as we continue this journey. I will most likely go back onto task with what I was going to be doing today for the next episode, which had to do with some dietary stuff. So join me on the next episode for that. Until then, once again, please follow along, share this with people you know if you feel you got something useful out of it. And I will see you on the flip side. Bye-bye.